I am a very caring person. I have a lot of love to give, and that will never, ever, ever have to start from scratch. I am not going to be put in a situation where somebody is belittling my feelings ever again. Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Up for Air with myself, Lou. I hope we're all okay. I hope everybody that lives in the UK had a glorious bank holiday. The weather actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it wasn't as hot as it was in the week. My sister came round on Sunday evening and we had some Aperols, and it just wasn't the same. I was drinking Aperols in the week by myself, and was having a great time in my little sun-trapped garden. And then on Sunday, we were sat out there, we had blankets, jumpers. I was like, we've got to be sitting outside to drink Aperol. We can't just sit inside and drink. We basically grin and beared the weather and then ended up coming in on the Sunday evening. Anyway, so I hope you all had really great bank holiday weekends. I'm just going to start off by saying thank you to everybody that has joined my Patreon over the weekend. I've had loads of people sign up, which is so nice because I think the people that have started my podcast from the beginning are like now catching up with the fact that I launched my Patreon maybe a year into my podcast. So thank you for everybody that has joined me on there. Thank you to everybody that continues to support me over on there. I've had some really in-depth, nice chats over the weekend, just helping out a couple of my followers who have come to me for advice, which is so nice. That I get to advise everybody that comes to me with a problem. So hopefully the advice helps. So if you do want to get involved in that, it's $4.50 a month. You know, the links can be found in the description of any single episode. They can also be found on my bio of my Instagram and my TikTok. So come and join the community. Come and join us over there. If you've got any specific questions or you think, I wish that like Lou would go into detail on like an episode on this, you probably find that I have spoken about it on my Patreon. Like I always say, I'm protected over there with a subscription fee. Not every Tom, Dick and Harry is going to be able to listen to my content over there unless you sign up, unless you put in an email address. And I have had an instance where I have had to stop somebody from being a member over there because I recognized their name and they had absolutely zero business being on my Patreon. That is a story for my Patreon. So yeah, I can have complete control over who listens to my content over there. So I get quite in depth, share some quite personal experiences, quite personal stories over there that you may be able to relate to, that may make you feel a little more validated. My course on becoming the strongest version of yourself is also available through my Stan store. That is still at £40 because so many people are just loving it at the moment. Obviously, it's coming into the summer. People want to be sort of like uplifted, getting out the slump of their breakup. So that course has proved to be very popular. Let me know if you do buy it so I can add you to my private YouTube group as well. The Detach from Your Ex course has got no videos. It's a downloadable PDF. It's full of affirmations, full of journaling exercises, full of things to think about, full of like mock routines, how I changed my routine up a little bit to fully be able to immerse myself in detaching from my ex. And I don't claim that you're going to do it in 4 days as well, unlike other creators that sit in the same space as me. Also, my Instagram is just growing by the second, which is so nice. I want to cast your minds back to when I said that I'm going to change up my content. And I was really quite nervous about changing up my content. I didn't know whether I was going to lose followers. I didn't know whether, you know, like the running community were going to like basically expedite me and say she's not posting any running content. Obviously I had shin splints, so I had not really got any running content to post, but it is really easy to relate my content with my breakup back to my running, because running helped me so much. But I did an episode on my Patreon last week about exercise and how not only running helps, but you know, getting back on the mat, doing Pilates and everything, and how all of that has helped me through going through my breakup, and now still, like, it still does help me. I feel like when people talk about running, I did a reel this morning about people saying that running saved their life and all the rest of it, and I understand that, you know, it definitely saved mine. However, I do think there are like little things that people don't realize running actually gives you. And I posted a reel this morning that was about it giving me a topic of conversation to talk about other than my breakup. It gave me something to talk to people about. I could say I was training for a half marathon, because like I always say, and I know I always say this, that people have word vomit, and people look at you after, they know that you've gone through a breakup, and it just comes out, and it's like, how are you getting on? Like, we know you're going through a breakup. And it's like, well, I'm in the middle of Tesco. I don't really want to talk about this. Whereas like you can kind of take back some control, and you can say, oh, like, for example, if I saw my mum's friends, I'd say like, oh, did mum say that, I'm training for a half marathon? And it gives the person a little bit of breathing space, because it's like, oh, thank God I don't need to talk about, she must be absolutely screaming inside her head. Like, we don't have to talk about the breakup. It gives you a topic of conversation to talk about that isn't your breakup. So I posted that reel on my Instagram this morning, and I've had some lovely messages off the back of it, just saying like, it's so true. When you find, your own little hobby, or you find like a sport that you have like fully immersed yourself in post breakup, it does give you another topic of conversation to talk about, because we all know that breakups fully consume your life. You get no days off. No days off. No one comes along and says, hey, do you want a breather? No, they definitely don't do that. And honestly, if you allow it, it will consume you. So I don't know how I got onto the topic of that conversation. Oh, my Instagram growing. And yes, so I hope that my Instagram has brought me new podcast followers as well. That'd be amazing to be a tool. YouTube analytics is so good. I can see where people have come from. I would love to be able to see like where my podcast followers on like Spotify and Apple have come from, whether they've come from my Instagram. But hopefully, if you are new here and you have found me, welcome. I'm really grateful that you are here and listening, and hopefully I will be able to help you along the way of your healing journey. So that is the hard sell over. Like I said, there's Patreon with extra episodes, there's my Become the Strongest Version of Yourself course, and there is now a Detach from Your Ex. And actually somebody messaged today, like, what creator, who is it that's saying that they can detach from their ex for 4 days? I would never say. Everyone each to their own. And I know that some people might feel put off with the fact that I've taken, I'd say probably 2 years to fully heal. I'm in like my 3rd year of healing, and I'm finding my feet and stuff now. But detaching from your ex in 4 days. And do you know the worst thing is, at the point that I was at and how I felt, I would have bought that course 1000%, because I'd been like, 4 days, yeah, let's do it. I understand like the pain point that she is getting on, because I know for a fact people look at my content and they go, 2 years, like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going through that. But what they don't realize is I'm saying, yes, it's taken me 2 years to heal, but it's not taking me 2 years to get over my ex. It's taking me 2 years to heal and kind of like be secure in knowing that I am going to be able to find somebody new. They aren't going to leave me, like all of those sorts of things becomes with healing. Buying a house, that's not going to take 4 days, is it? That takes like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. I think my sister and my brother-in-law's house at the moment, they're on like week 13 of buying a house. And so I'm quite realistic when I talk about how long it's taken me to heal, and hopefully that gives you some form of comfort when you're like, oh my God, I can't do this for 2 years. I don't mean that. It isn't going to take 2 years like for you to stop feeling this pain. There's going to be sorts of like moments where you still have like a moment where you think, oh my God, I can't believe what I went through. I would say that is probably why I get the most upset, because people will say like, I genuinely can't believe you went through that. And I'm like, same. Same. And I went really like quite through it, like really through it. So anyway, little debrief from me. I had quite a calm bank holiday for me. I thought I was going to end up going out quite a lot, but I actually didn't. And it seems to be a common theme here. When my best friend is away, I have very chilled weekends. Not blaming him for my party antics at all. I still could have got out this weekend, but I just chose not to. On Friday, I stayed in and went and seen one of my friends. We just caught up. And then Saturday day, I really got to work with my adult admin. I blitzed the house top to bottom, sorted out all of my like summer wardrobe, bikinis, and like all of that. Sorted out so much stuff in my bedroom because I'm such a hoarder when it comes to clothes. I put loads of stuff on Vinted. I actually went back and looked and seen how much I've made on Vinted. I made like nearly £1,500 on Vinted. And that, like, I started posting probably like just after Christmas. So like in 5 months, well, 4 months, I made like 1,500 quid. That is not bad going. It also poses the question as to why I have so many, and a lot of the stuff that I do sell is brand new, which kind of goes hand in hand with the fact that I have a shopping addiction and I just never take things back. I'm the world's worst. And so everything of mine comes with tags, which is, yeah, it's really bad and it's quite embarrassing, to be quite honest. I need to grow up a bit, get a grip. So sorted some more stuff out, put some more stuff on Vinted. If you ever want my link for my Vinted, let me know. I'll send it to you. And then on Sunday, went out for breakfast with my sisters and then did some content creation. And then I saw my sister in the evening. She came out for some Aperols, like I said. And then I was supposed to go out, but my best friend she went for dinner with her parents. And then for some reason, she texted me, we were going to go to the village. And she texted me saying that all the pubs had shut at 9:30. So all the pubs were shutting at 9:30. They called last orders at 9. And it was because there was a big traveller presence in the village that day. I don't know whether there was a funeral or whatever, but we have quite a big travelling community like on the outskirts of where I live. And usually they don't pose any trouble at all. They've been there for years. And a lot of people know them. My ex used to know them because he used to box with quite a lot of them. But apparently they were causing a bit of trouble at the weekend. So the pub's shut. And realistically, that really did me a favour because I didn't end up going out, which meant I didn't have a hangover on Monday. So I ended up seeing one of my friends. My sister left. I ended up seeing one of my friends on Sunday evening. And then Monday morning, I was fresh as daisy. I still had a little nana nap on Monday, but I think that was just because I'd been up late on Friday, been up late on Sunday. But yeah, it was great. I got loads done yesterday content wise. So uploading onto my YouTube, like my YouTube shorts and stuff, and got all of that done. It was a very productive Monday. So I actually have had quite and I hate this word, wholesome. I just really don't like it. It's not a word that describes me in any way, shape, or form. I am not a wholesome girly. Although my weekend was quite wholesome. So I don't know whether I've really spoken to you guys about this. I've spoken about my hair journey. I was supposed to get my hair done yesterday, but my best friend who does it, she's a flight attendant. She's been called to go to Bournemouth this week to fly. So she couldn't do my hair. So hopefully next week when you see me, I think she's doing it at the weekend, I will be a blonde bombshell. The blonde coming back. I want to be super, super blonde for the summer, but I've spoken about that. But I've been on a bit of like a saving journey as well. I have not bought anything new clothes-wise for the whole year. And I've been making a few adjustments with my skincare and stuff like that, trying to find like more friendly on the wallet alternatives. Now, my skincare is the most expensive thing that I think I own. I really invest in my skincare. I've said before, I had really bad skin when I was at school, really bad acne, and it's something that it's a non-negotiable for me. Some of my cleansers cost in the remits of about £45, and we get through them. I use them twice a day. So I've been like chopping and changing out like certain things, seeing what works and seeing what doesn't. And I've had to stick with a few things, but a few things I've been pleasantly surprised with. But I have been on a little bit of a saving spree. Now, that goes to say as well with like me booking holidays and flights and anything like that. I've really cracked down on myself this year. I've really wanted to save money and put everything into this. And when you're building something, you do have to really focus all your attention in it. So not getting distracted by going on shopping days. Like I could have very easily just gone shopping this weekend and made myself feel unreal and been really happy with the fact I'd spent, over £100 in Zara, because Zara is my safe space. Zara is where I go to find happiness. And when I come out of Zara, I would say yes to any opportunity because I would just be in such a good mood. There's a running joke with me and my sisters. They're like, get yourself to Zara. Like, you're Mardy, go to Zara. They've not said that this year because they know that I'm on a saving spree. So I'm saving every single penny that I can because I think it's one of those things where money is one of those where, yes, I've been healing for the last 2 years, but I've also just said yes to everything. And when I look back on what I did last year and the year before, particularly 23, I spent a hell of a lot of money and I can't be doing that. I'm a homeowner, I have got bills to pay and my best friend's getting married this year. So instead of thinking like, oh my God, I want to go on holiday this year, I want to spend, all my time. Everybody knows that I don't want to live in the UK. That's partly the reason why I've been saving, because like, you know, going abroad and to the place that I want to basically live. Ibiza is so expensive. I want to build my savings back up, basically. And she's getting married this year. She's getting married in Sicily in September. And I was just going to go out there for the wedding, but I'm going out there for a week now because I thought, you know, that can be my holiday for the year potentially. And, you know, I'll go here and there, and I'll go and see friends and maybe jump on a few flights if they're cheap and whatever. And I'm totally okay with that. My dad kind of toyed with the idea of maybe us going away as a family, which would be so nice. But I am happy enough to use that just as my holiday. And this is all kind of like linked in with like the time element that I talk about, and like not rushing anything. And I don't need to rush and do loads of stuff this year. When I think about where I am with my life, I've bought a house, which is one of the biggest achievements I think anybody will do in their lifetime, because especially now, like getting on the property ladder is a joke. I have to sometimes like take a step back and think, hey, hold on a second. You own a house. And like sometimes when I'm like, oh, I wish my budget would just stretch to that. And then I'm like, wait a second. You own a house. I run a house and a car on my own. And I think sometimes like society makes it so accessible to be able to see people that have got, you know, houses and going on all these lavish holidays and stuff. And sometimes I have to look and I think, hold on a second. When I had a dual income, when there was 2 incomes in my household, I was going on loads of holidays because we were able to support the house and do whatever else. And sometimes I do, like when I drive down my driveway, I'm like, oh my God, this is all mine. Like, I've bought this and no one can take it away from me. And I think that sometimes stops me in my tracks because I'm like, hold on a second, Lou, like give yourself some breathing space here. Like you don't need to be gallivanting off around the world. And that comes to say with obviously like comparison to what your ex is maybe doing. And like I said, like for some reason, I always know what my ex is doing because people seem to just tell me. And I would love to know if the boot was the same on the other foot. And I very much doubt it is because he distanced himself from so many people. I don't think he probably knows what I'm doing. And also, I think that it's different when you're the one that's chosen to leave. I very much doubt they're like, hey, have you seen that Lou's doing this and Lou's doing that? I don't think it gets brought up into conversation because he spoke very little about his breakup with everybody. And that was obviously really quite apparent when I spoke to everyone about his story and his side of the story with the breakup. So yeah, you can get like in a comparison nightmare and think, oh my God, I should be doing that because they're doing this. But you literally don't at all. You probably chose like really separate paths. Me and my ex did. He decided not to buy a house and I decided to buy a house. He didn't know where he wanted to set up roots because he hasn't got a lot around here. He's got his family, but he hasn't got a lot of friends around here. Whereas like my entire family's here. My entire support network is here. Every single one of my friends lives within 20 minutes of where I live. And it was so important to me. And I love being able to, I was telling my brother-in-law this the other day, I love being able to walk into a coffee shop and be like, hey, and then be like, hey Liz, what are you up to? Like, and them know me. Walk into anywhere, walk into a local pub and then be like, hey, what are you on with? I really like that. Or just going somewhere local and bumping into somebody that you know. Like I was telling the story when we were sat outside my best friend's coffee shop and 2 of our mates walked past. They ended up joining it and drinking with us for the rest of the day. It was so much fun. So yeah, sometimes I have to slow myself down and think, ugh, doesn't matter that you're only going on one holiday this year because look what you're building. You're building something that is going to give you so much freedom in the future, and that's what I have to keep focusing on. You know, I always said that 2025 was the year that I got my head down and cracked on with this. At Christmas, I want to be sat here and saying to you guys like, this is what I've achieved, and then hopefully in the coming years I'll be able to teach you guys how I did it, you know, and be able to say to people coming out of relationships and breakups and stuff, like, channel your energy into something else. This is what I've built, because all of this has been built since my breakup, and I want to be able to inspire people to do more and to know that there's so much more out there for them. They just have to go and chase it. You just have to go and chase your dreams, basically. Anyway, debrief done. My computer has crashed twice in the whole of this debrief. I'm so Honestly, this poor little computer is fighting for its life today. I don't know why it crashed even before we started. So obviously it doesn't like the fact that there is a lot going on. I even have an external hard drive with so much space that isn't even connected, and it's just really struggling today. So it might be a bit, this episode you might be able to see that like I've had to like merge two sections together because we've had a computer crash in between. Touch wood, that doesn't happen and that everything goes swimmingly well. Anyway, today I have been inspired by a quote that I saw in a toilet cubicle. Now, stay with me on this. I went to a place the other day to go and meet one of my friends, and she was like, let's meet here. So we met there, and I got there and I was like, oh, she's not here. So I bought us both peppermint tea, nipped to the toilet. In the toilet, there was like quotes all over the walls that had been like all over the toilet cubicle walls that had been printed on the walls. And they were like, I don't know, like loads of positive quotes, but then people had added to the quotes in permanent marker, and people were like, you know, adding on to the quote saying like, I'm really scared of this, or, you know, there was one there that was like, everything is so expensive, I don't know how I'm ever going to move out. And like, whilst I was sitting there having a wee, it was really interesting to read all these quotes. And then all of a sudden I looked straight forward, and the quote that was standing out to me the most was, you are not starting over from scratch, you are starting with experience. And I thought, wow, that hits hard. Like, that is just really the description of my life for the last 3 years. You are not starting over from scratch. You are starting with experience. And I thought that is a brilliant podcast episode, because I know for a fact, and I did a reel on this and I did a TikTok on this, both of them blew up. I used to say to my ex, like when he left, and when every single time he left and every single time we had an argument, I was saying to him, you have ruined my life. You have ruined my life. I've had to start over. And some people will be able to relate to this and some people won't. And I obviously say more and more with my chest that my ex got into a relationship pretty quickly, because it was a relationship that he'd started, or a friendship that he'd started whilst we were still together. And I remember saying to him, you don't have to start from scratch. You haven't got to do that, because you formed something whilst we were still together. You had a safety net, and I've not got a safety net. I'm having to start over from scratch. And it is so not true, but it is so true at the time when you say it, when you look and you think, oh my God, like I'm starting over from scratch. Because you, like for me, you know, I lost my house, I lost my relationship, I lost, you know, the family members from his side, I lost a couple of friends with that, and I lost my relationship, I lost my future, you know, the marriage, the wedding, everything. I was starting from scratch, and it was very, very daunting. And I spent a long time saying to myself, I'm starting from scratch. And then when I read this quote, I thought, oh my God, I'm so not starting over from scratch. Like, that is not a thing. I'm not starting from scratch. I'm starting something new, but I'm not starting from scratch, because I know exactly what it's like to be in a relationship. And I just wanted to like split this all out, because I think there is so many positive and negative things that people talk about when you go through a breakup. And I think a lot of things are skimmed over. I think a lot of people home in on the fact that you can spot the red flags again. You know, you'll never date someone that does so-and-so. You'll never date someone that works as so-and-so. And that is the case. You know, I'll talk about all of that. But also you can talk about the positives, and you can say like, well, I'm going to definitely do that again, because that really worked for me. And very, very often in this space, a lot of things are spoken negatively about in terms of breakups, because they are really frigging hard. But I think you can draw some positives as well. So we're going to do that. We're going to go through that. We're going to talk about that quote. I loved seeing that quote so much. I looked at it and I thought, Jesus. And I came out of the toilet and I said to one of my friends, I was like, I've just seen a quote that has given me a whole podcast idea. And she was like, do you ever stop? And I was like, no, maybe that is a toxic trait of mine, that I do not stop. My mind is always, 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 always ticking over. It's wild. Anyway, so without further ado, guys, get your peppermint teas, get your coffees, get whatever, put your headphones in, go for a wander, go for a run. Let's get into it. I am a very caring person. I have a lot of love to give, and that will never, ever, ever have to start from scratch.
Okay, so we're going to start with the quote. So what you're going to do today is you're going to breathe in the fact that you are not starting from scratch and that you are starting with experience. And really think about what that means to you, because when I sat there having a wee, I was like, oh my God, that is so true. The more you talk to people, especially in like a romantic way, if you are like dating or whatever, you will realize that you actually bring so much experience to the table, and that the only thing that is starting from scratch is a connection that you find with somebody. That is the only thing. And that isn't even starting from scratch. That is something new, and that should be exciting. However, I completely understand how it feels to like panic about starting fresh, because a lot of the stuff that you see online will be like, get a fresh start. And it's like, that's really scary. And like the emotional whiplash that you sort of endure when you are unwillingly having to start over is huge. It'll break your neck. Like I remember, and I use the term whiplash because I literally, and everybody knows my story, you know, I came back in that time, I walked into the kitchen and it was like, bang, by the way, your life's just changed. Stood there with bags, like literally changed overnight. The whiplash that came with those feelings was huge. And it is so normal to use the phrase like, I'm having to start over. I'm starting from scratch. And like, yes, they are all true, but it's not necessarily that. You're not saying, I'm having to meet somebody new. I'm having to start a connection from scratch. Like, you're not saying that. You're saying that your whole life starts from scratch. And that isn't true. What you need to remember is it's an experience. So everything that you encountered during your relationship is an experience. And it's just like, for example, going on holiday, you experience something, you take things away, you come back and you say, do you know what? I'm not doing that again on holiday. I'm not using that suntan lotion on holiday. You know, I'm going to use that tanner on holiday. We're not going to go there again. We're not going to, you know, go half board. We'll probably go all inclusive, or vice versa. Your relationship, and I know this is like on a smaller scale, but like your relationship is like that. It's an experience, you know, the laughs, the fights that you had, every single moment that you experienced in that relationship, you get to carry forward as almost like data, and like almost things that you can step back on when you're in a new relationship. You get to carry that forward, not as like emotional baggage. You're not carrying things forward as emotional baggage. I'm the world's worst for saying that. Like I'll say like, oh, you know, yeah, I've got the baggage of like going through an awful breakup. You're not carrying that through. You're carrying it through as like almost like a blueprint, because you've got to have experienced what you've experienced. And now you can draw in on that. And you can realize, actually, do you know what? I wouldn't do that again, or I would do that again. And I remember my therapist saying to me, your pain didn't break you. It allowed you to break open to parts of you that you get to reclaim. And it was almost like, hold on a second, what does that even mean? What she meant by it is that your pain didn't break you completely. You're not broken. You're not having to, like, you know, pick up the pieces and like stick yourself back together again, even though it does feel like that. It's opened avenues and opened things that you would probably have never have sat and thought about had you'd stayed in that relationship. And yes, everybody, the ideal situation is not to go through a breakup, but I've opened parts of me where I didn't ever think that I would be that person. And, you know, I talk about sometimes like I scare myself because I'm like, who the hell is this? And why is she so determined to do something? I would have never found that part of me had I not been through my breakup. It breaks open parts of you that, you know, you would have never have found had you stayed in that relationship. This would never have been built had I not gone through a breakup. I always knew I wanted to build something online. I didn't know what. This would have never been built. I would have never have run marathons. And I know that for a fact. And people can turn around to me and say, oh, you know, you'd still have run that half. And I would have still have run that half, but I was also getting married in August. So I wouldn't have run the virtual London Marathon because I'd have been far too excited about becoming a bride, far too excited about becoming a wife. And then, but the following year we probably would have gone on a honeymoon and it would have all snowballed. And so I stay firm that, I wouldn't have run marathons if I hadn't gone through my breakup. It broke open a part of me that I didn't think existed. And yes, you feel like I said, you're picking up parts of you and you're gluing them back together, and some of them are falling out. It's like, what do they call it? Chocolate teapot. Like really, just really struggling every single time hot water goes in, you feel like you're melting back down. You do feel like that. However, that is why I'm here trying to tell you that, yes, that is okay to feel like that. Of course it is. I felt like that for a long time. But eventually you'll realize that it's going to open parts of you that never would have been open had you had not broken in the first place. It's not a negative. You have to see these things as being positive. And I think a lot, and one of the main things that people say to me is like, oh my God, 14 years of your life, what a waste of time. Or like I was saying, I knew that halfway through our relationship, something happened. And then, the second half of my relationship, I could look back and think, oh my God, what a waste of time. I could have definitely made a connection with somebody new, met somebody new that wasn't going to treat me the way that he did, wasn't going to walk out on me. I could have spiraled, and I did spiral, thinking all these things about my ex and about my relationship. And it's not a waste of time. I talk about that a lot, how I wouldn't have wanted to spend 14 years of my life doing anything else. Like, I was happy that I was in a relationship. It worked out for my life. I was able to go to university still. It wasn't a waste of time. And more importantly, that time taught me of who I am when I'm in love. Because let me just break this down. I loved the bones of my ex, and I would have done anything for him. And I loved him for a very long time after. I think all I wanted to do was really dislike him, and I just couldn't. And that made it so hard for me to move on because I absolutely adored him. And I know that when I'm a girlfriend or when I'm a fiance, I know how much I love love. And I know that getting into a new relationship, how I want to feel. And just because my ex had red flags, big fat red flags, flaws, whatever, I will always be the same person as I was in that relationship.
Yes, I'll have boundaries. Yes, I won't put in it with stuff that, I put up maybe and let slide in my old relationship. But I'll always be the same sort of person in love. I will be the type of person that when I love wholeheartedly, and I love me when I'm in love. And like I've spoken about this and maybe on my Patreon a little bit more, but like when I've found somebody or caught myself in like maybe a situation where I'm like, oh, I actually quite like this person, I can feel myself how I felt in my relationship doing things like girlfriend tendencies. And like I am a very caring person. I have a lot of love to give, and that will never ever ever have to start from scratch. I know what type of person I am when I'm in love, and yes, the love for the person has to start at the beginning. It has to be new, it has to be fresh. But my God, is that not the exciting part when you get into like getting to know somebody? The excitement of like, oh my God, I get to see somebody new. The love that you will have for somebody and the way that you love like somebody is not the new part. You're not the new part. You're not having to build that up. And I know people will argue the fact that your trust is shattered and all the rest of it. That does come back. However, that is not on you. Yes, you have to learn how to trust somebody again, but also the person that you meet will be doing stuff to reassure you that you can trust them. That is like 50-50, I feel. But actually knowing who you are and knowing what the love you are capable of, has got nothing to do with anybody else. You have that. You get to keep that. And I'm just going to go through 4 really common phrases that I hear and really common things that people say to me. Number 1 was, I've wasted years of my life. I've just wasted so much time on this person. It was never a waste of time. And, I've done an episode of this. I know this is one of quite like an early episode, but like, you do not ever waste time. Everything is a lesson. Like, think about the core lessons that you've learned within your relationship, and that is proof to you that nothing is wasted. And, you know, I've not shared big lessons that I've gone through, but one of my main lessons that I have learned is that I will never, ever, ever, ever be too much for somebody. So if I'm being told, you know, the way you've reacted, you've overreacted, you should be chilled about that. You shouldn't be putting your foot down with that. I'm just a really emotional person. And somebody will come along and say, hey, I understand that you're emotional, but let's talk through it. There was never an opportunity. I was never given an opportunity in an argument to be able to voice why I felt like that. I was just always told, like, sorry that you feel like that, not like, have I made you feel like that? Is there anything I can do to make you feel better? Sorry that you feel like that. It was always like put on my shoulders. And that is one of the biggest lessons that I have learned, and that I am not too emotional. I'm not too much. Like, this is just the person that I am. And somebody will come along and that will be fine with somebody. I am not going to be put in a situation where somebody is belittling my feelings ever again. And that is something that I know that would never change in that person. You can't unlearn things like that. You can't. Actually, that's a lie. You probably can unlearn things like that, but you can't unlearn them without going like up against somebody. It would cause a lot of arguments. My life was just easier if I didn't challenge things like that, you know? And I just think that has put me in a situation where I look back on certain situations in my relationship and I think I probably should have done more, or I should have spoke up more. And that leads me really nicely on to the next thing that people always come and say to me. They say, they left me, I must not be enough. And I felt like this. And obviously my ex got into a relationship really soon after, and that just like doubled down on the fact that I did not feel like I was enough. And you have to remember that you are enough, and that them leaving you, or, you know, them breaking up with you, was about their own capacity, not your worth. Their own capacity in not being able to love, their own capacity in not being able to communicate how they're feeling. And obviously, I've gone over and over and over my breakup because of therapy and all the rest of it. And I understand now the way that he left. And obviously, my abandonment trauma is huge, but the way that he left had nothing to do with me. The way that he left had everything to do with him. His inability to be able to sit me down as an adult and say how he was feeling and communicate with me. Instead, he just decided to get up and leave, which has left me with the biggest amount of trauma to deal with. I then would very much easily say to somebody like, I've got really bad abandonment issues. Like, I really struggle with people leaving in certain situations, and making it almost like, you know, my ex did this to me. And it's like, my ex did this to me. Reframe that and think, my ex was incapable of talking to me, incapable of telling me how he felt. The only way he saw fit and the only way he saw out was to just leave. And all of a sudden, it's like, that's, yes, it's my trauma, but I didn't do anything. Like, then you're not saying like, you know, I must not be enough. I'm not worthy. I wasn't worthy of an explanation. No, you are. It was just completely on them. It was their capacity. And that has taken me a long time, and it'll probably take you a long time to digest. And the more you say it, the better it goes in. And the more people, you know, talk to me and pick up, you know, my story and come and find me from wherever avenue, and they say like, how the hell did you get over it? And it's like, these things take time. You have to go through them step by step. You have to return to them, go through them methodically. The reason why I have abandonment issues is not because I carry trauma. Obviously I do. The reason why I have abandonment issues is because, yes, the way that my ex left me was abandonment, but also that doesn't mean that then I have to be, you know, burdened with the fact that I have abandonment trauma and it be a negative. It should be a huge negative on your ex. Huge. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. It's terrifying behavior. The fact that somebody could just up and leave out of someone's life is terrifying behavior. And I take more comfort in that, because then I think, you know, yes, I've got abandonment trauma, but at least I'm not the one doing the abandoning. I would live in fear. Like, the next person, I would live in fear. And if you asked anybody, anybody would be the same. I would live in constant fear. And when me and one of my friends were talking the other day, and she was telling me about this guy, and she was like, yeah, it's just so obvious that he's got commitment issues. issues, why do I attract them? And I was like, that term commitment issues is always going to hang over somebody's head if they have left somebody after a certain amount of years, if they have run out, a couple of months after they get married, like before they get married, run out after they've had a baby. Commitment issues. Like that umbrella term is huge, but it's used so much, and it's so true. And it has nothing to do with you. It doesn't make you any less worthy of anything. And I said to myself a lot, and I started off this episode by saying that, like I said this to my ex a lot as well, I have to start dating all over again. For me, it was, I have to start dating for the first time. And obviously I did a whole episode of dating apps last week, but like I reframed that more recently. I'll probably say this year that like I've reframed that in that like this is the time that I choose from alignment, not loneliness. I'm going to choose somebody from alignment, not loneliness. Now, stay with me on this, because I would say that somebody that would jump into a new relationship was just scared about being lonely, doesn't want to face the fact that they're going to have to go and find out for somebody new. Convenience. People jump into new relationships because it's convenient and they don't have to think about being by themselves. Now, because I've been on my own for 3 years, I understand how hard it is. And I understand that if I wanted to get out of a relationship, this would petrify me. And so I would probably jump into something new. That is not me saying I completely understand what my ex did, but I understand what was behind it. And I understand when people do it and people tell me they did it, I'm like, I'm not surprised, because I had a rough 3 years sitting on my own and being by myself. Like, I completely get it. But 99% of the time, these relationships don't last because they've jumped into something new, and they've jumped into something that they were probably running away from. They probably realized that, they had commitment issues and they didn't want to get married, or they didn't want to have children, or whatever it was. It's got absolutely nothing to do with the person. It's got everything to do with them and what they're going through, and the things that they're thinking when they're laying in bed at night. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. You don't come into that at all, because I know for a fact that I slept soundly at night. I knew that what I wanted. I knew I wanted to be in a relationship. I knew that I wanted to get married and eventually potentially start like a family. I knew all those things. And the people that don't are the people that do the running away. And you have to make sure, and this is what I've made sure, that I'm not running into the dating world completely naive and like eager to please almost. And that was me. I was constantly eager to prove my worth in my relationship. And I don't know whether that's because it was a young relationship, we were young and it was all new, and this has all been really new, but like I was constantly like keen to please him. And I think that comes from a fact of I wasn't reassured a lot in my relationship. And I say all the time, this is not an ex-bashing podcast, and I remember a few things that he said once we'd split up. I'm not going to do that because you didn't like it. And they are the words that hurt the most, because you're like, why could you not show up like that for me? But I think when you're out of a relationship and you realize things, I've realized loads of things out of my relationship, and it's okay and it's fair for them to come away from your relationship and think, you know what, I'm not going to do that again. And that's probably not going to sit well with so-and-so. They have to take lessons as well. And unfortunately, you take the hit because you have to hear the phrase, I'm not going to do that with them. But they have got to learn lessons as well. You have to be open-minded, and healing is being able to know that they're not saying that through spite. They've also got lessons to learn as well, but they've probably got the harder lessons to learn because they've done the hurt. And I have realized that I'm stepping into like the dating world and the single world, like open-minded and not scared to settle, because I know that I was so happy when I was settled, and that doesn't scare me. My issue with like a couple of the things that I'm still going to therapy for are being able to understand that people can be trusted, but it's how much I want to be able to see that someone can be trusted. And like I'm still in therapy for that sort of thing, but I don't fear settling down, because when I look back, I'm like, my God, I was so fun in a relationship. I was so fun. I was loving. I bent over backwards, and I'll probably still do all of those things. But additional to my old relationship, I will have boundaries, definitely. I definitely have more of a voice now, and I definitely feel like I can challenge people on things that are going to protect me, because I've learned how to protect me in the last 3 years, because I've been my only priority, and that has been really, really important and really quite valuable for me. The last thing I want to talk about, one of the phrases that I see obviously, understandably, all the time, is people saying, I miss them so much. And you do. And my God, it is like someone has died and they're still living and you can still talk to them. Imagine if you could talk to somebody beyond the grave. Like, you would miss them every day. And I've got, nans, granddads, uncles, family, friends and stuff that I would miss so much more if I could speak to them every single day beyond the grave. 1000%. You're grieving someone that's alive. It's horrible. And you have to get strong with this, because you have to think, I miss the idea of them. I do not miss the hurt. And I've had to say this quite a few times to a couple of the girls on my Patreon, like, if you allow them back in, you are blocking. If you allow them back in, you are not only blocking, say, a future connection with somebody that, you haven't got the doubts with, but you are saying to yourself, this is all that I'm worthy of. This is what I am worthy of. This bad in and out behavior is what I'm going to settle for, because that's all I'm worthy of. No, you're worthy of so much more. You're worthy of a love that is so trusting and so open and gives you reassurance and gives you all of the things that your ex potentially didn't. When you go back, you have to remind yourself you will miss the comfort, you miss the idea of them. It is so normal to feel like that, but you are holding on to a fantasy of when you were good. And I could very easily look at, say, my ex and his new relationship now and think, oh, I remember when we were like that. And I remember when he took me there. And I remember when he did that with me. And I could very easily spiral and think, this is so unfair. But I don't, because I also think, oh my God, that person had the ability to completely abandon me and my family, which is terrifying. Like, I'm worth so much more than that. I'm worth so much more than the way that he treated me. I am worth so much more. And you have to remind yourself. And do a mini journal entry. Write down what you actually miss, and then write by them, did I have this or did I hope for this? And then go through the list of things and see how many things you could actually have in somebody else. 99% of the time, you miss, going away, you miss going on dates, you miss going on holiday. All of those things you can bundle together and you can find in somebody new. And I'm not taking away from the fact that that is so scary. I'm not saying that. But all I'm saying is, like, to calm your mind and to know that, yes, you can miss them, but do you miss them or do you miss what you did with them? Which, I've seen my friends move on recently. One of my friends, she's moved her new fella in with her, and she's having the best time. She's living pretty much the same life as she did with her ex, but like, when I talk to her, she's more sprightly, she's more upbeat, she's found somebody that they connect on the same level, they both have a shopping addiction, they both are constantly at Vista Village. She's having the best time. And when I think back to her relationship, like, she must think, God, like, I've moved him in. Yes, we've gone back into being like really close really fast. She moved him in quite quickly, but she's so much happier because, yes, she's gone back into, say, the same sort of situation she had with her ex, but this guy has brought her so much more into her life. She's so much more calmer as well, because she's like, you think I'm hectic, she is hectic. And you are rebuilding now with wisdom. You are rebuilding from awareness. And the three biggest things I think I have learned from going through my breakup is that the cost of ignoring your intuition, the cost of ignoring your gut instinct is huge. And I have to not beat myself up about that. Having a gut feeling about something, I will never ignore my gut. You'll hear me say it all the time. I will never ignore a gut feeling ever again. I will never allow somebody to tell me that it's all in my head or I'm overthinking something. Never. I never knew what the term gaslighting meant before I went to therapy. And now I'm so aware of it. It will happen again, ever. It's cost me a lot of my healing time, not trusting my gut. And I have learnt that asking to be shown love and feel love in return of my love is not too much. I loved my ex, and when you feel like you're giving 110 and getting 70 and like percent in return, and when you address it, I know that I am worthy of so much more. I will never, ever, ever do that ever again. If I don't think that my love's being returned, I am out. And even if it means walking away from somebody that I really like, I'm just not doing it because I know the implications that it has. And, like 6 months down the line, you could still be in the same position and it's rough. And I know how hard it is to choose yourself even when it hurts. And that is me being single, choosing myself every single day, choosing to be off the dating apps, choosing to sit with myself, sit with being single, all those things. Like, I know how hard it is. I've learned so many deep lessons, not just, I'm not doing that because it's a red flag on my ex. I'm not doing this because it's a red flag on my ex. Those things come into it, but they're not the be all and end all. They're not every single lesson that I've actually learned. Some of them just lie with myself. And on the back of this, I know that I have not rushed to find something better. I'm not posting all over my Instagram like, I've been spending time with him, I've been spending time with him, posting absolutely everything for the world to see. I have no point to prove. I'm not building my life for approval of anyone. I said to my sister the other day, something came up the other day, like it always does with my breakup. I still find out things. It's just wild. Someone said to me the other day something about his family, and I said, there's certain groups of people that like I tell my story to in depth and then become my close friends. The last people on this earth that I have to prove anything to, anything, I have hardcore evidence of this. I do not need to prove that to him or his family. And for such a long time, I wanted to knock on his parents' door and say, hey, look at this. Or did you know he did this? I could have opened my mouth on so many occasions and I haven't. And I said to my sister was like, oh my God, you're so right. The last people on this earth I have anything to prove to is them. I just don't. They are not in my life anymore. I don't have any feelings towards that. That's a point that I was dying to get to because wanting to out your ex is so normal, but it brings you nothing but harm. It does not bring you peace. You are building for peace, not approval. Take it away, sit with it, go and tell the same story that you've told your parents. You're saying this is my new life, I've moved on, but also I'm going back to my ex's family to tell them what he's done. No, like you're not honoring the boundary of this is my new life and I'm moving on. This is my new life, I'm building for peace, not approval. That's how it has to be. And just to finish, I think it's really common, really normal to struggle with this and struggle with the fact that, you're not starting from scratch because that's how it feels like. It feels like you're starting your life all over again. When I went and bought my house, I knew exactly what I wanted because I knew exactly what I didn't want because of my previous house. And I was able to plaster the ceilings. I was able to paint the walls. I was able to lay the floor in this office. I was able to repaint my bathroom. Like, I've been able to do so much more because, yes, buying a house on your own sounds like you're starting from scratch, but you're not because you're going into the house. I'd flipped this house within 8 months. I had 3 brand new rooms in this house. Yes, everything ground to a halt because then I started living my life, going to Ibiza, flying around all over everywhere in brand new outfits, living my best life. And this year and next year, I'm going to put some more money aside to continue my house up because I can. And I learned from my first house. I'm not going in from scratch. I'm going in with experience. And like I said, going into a new relationship, yeah, that is from scratch. But oh my God, how exciting is that? When you get to the point, you might not be at the point now, but when you get to the point when you are finding somebody new and, I've dated and I've spent time with people and stuff, it is so exciting. It's so exciting. That new, fresh relationship sort of like honeymoon period it's so exciting. And you get to apply the things that came out of your relationship to this new one. And like I always say, it's nothing to do with you. This is nothing to do with you. You have to split your almost life in half and have an old life. And this is what I always say to people. I talk online till I'm blue in the face about my old life. My old life is you can go and find stuff about my old life. There's no pictures or anything online anymore, but the stories are there. My podcast is available, my TikTok videos, my Instagram posts, that's all my old life. You get to rebuild a new life, and only you decide who has access to that. Obviously, as a side, I know that if you've got children, it's a little bit harder, but I always try and make it relatable for everyone. That might not be the case if you've got children. However, you can keep your life private. And I always challenge people that are quite negative about my podcast when they say, like, so you sit online and you talk about your ex. And I'm like, no, I talk about my breakup. There's a difference. And also, I'm like, try and tell me where I was this weekend. Tell me where I was this weekend, who I was with, what did I do? And yes, I debrief in the starts of these episodes, but I don't tell you who I was with and what I was doing and where I'd gone. And the last time I think I went to Ibiza, no one even knew. I didn't even post it anywhere. I didn't tell you guys. I just said that I was away. You didn't know where I was. You can rebuild a sacred private life. And I would encourage you to do that, because that's what I've done. And that's how I found a lot of peace. I love bumping into people and then saying, what have you been doing? I love that, because it's so funny, because people think that I post my whole life online, and I just don't. And I think the way that my podcast and my TikTok works and stuff is like, my TikTok is an advertisement for my podcast, and people that are in like that online space know how that works. But people that are just outsiders that just don't want to listen to what I have to say, or just say, oh, she's just hung up on her ex. It's not the case, and we all know that's not the case. However, I do encourage you to kind of separate your life out and think of it as not starting over, starting with experience. More importantly, you allow the access of the people that you want access to your life. You have complete control over that. If you don't want someone to find out about something, if you don't want somebody to know about something, don't tell them, don't post it. I will come back to the fact that you will only know, unless you're really close to me, what my husband looks like, because I will post a picture on our wedding day and it will be like, hey, oh, we've been together for however many years. This is my husband. Like, I want that. That's the life that I want, because I have, again, taken experience from my previous relationship. Putting it everywhere online will only come and bite you on the bum, because you will be the one deleting the photos again on New Year's Eve on your own with a bottle of Prosecco, like I did. It will only make people talk about you more. And people will talk about, obviously, my breakup, your breakup, whatever you're going through. People talk about the fact that I put it online. People talk about all of that. What they don't do is they don't talk about my new life, because they can't. And like I said, that just comes with experience. And I fully, fully, fully recommend you do that. I hope that this episode has helped. Let me know if you want me to talk on anything. I kind of have all the episodes mapped out for this month already, kind of in motion, but let me know if you want me to talk on anything. Let me know if you want me to get specific in something. You can always join me on my Patreon, and I can talk to you over there about anything you wish me to talk about. And so if you're not joining us over on my Patreon, you will not get the 2 additional episodes on the Wednesday. Therefore, I will speak to you on the Friday. Look after yourself, guys. Bye.